Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to another episode of Parenthood Spotlight. This is our little corner to slow down, breathe in stories, and listen to voices that shape the worlds our children grow up in. Today's guest is someone I've admired for a very long time: a library educator, a story educator, a trainer, and a consultant, Joanne Saldana. Many of you and your children might already know her as Myth Auntie. That name carries with it not just stories, but also the warmth of someone who has been bringing myths, books, and libraries alive for children for more than a decade now. Joanne believes deeply in the power of reading and storytelling in children's lives, and she also believes in something I hold close too, that knowledge must be shared freely. Over the years, through her workshops, her writings, her presence in school libraries, she has been doing exactly that. Joanne, I'm just so delighted to have you here today. Thank you for being here and welcome to Parenthood Spotlight.
Mia, thank you. That was such a generous introduction, truly. Thank you. I feel quite special, and it's very special to be here and to meet you like this again after so long, fellow library educator. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'd love to start at the beginning with you. You've had such a fascinating journey, wearing many hats as an educator, a consultant, and a storyteller. Can you take us back to the time to what first drew you into this world of stories, books, and libraries?
I often forget that my mum ran a library. And
Oh,
it's not really part of what I remember. But recently, when I've been writing about books, people who knew me when I was younger and who knew my mom at that point in time would say, "Hey, you know what? We used to come to your mom's library." So it was those typical circulating libraries.
yeah.
She was obviously, I mean, my mom is still alive. She's obviously used to be a reader. Now she, is quite old and all the old age related concerns. So she's unable to concentrate on her work. But yes, we had a library. I don't know whether I get it from that, but my dad was a great storyteller. So
Hmm.
he always would spin stories, make up songs, sing all kinds of stuff. So we grew up with a lot of stories that were not necessarily religious stories or from a book or something. It was stuff that he would just make up on the spot. And I would read a lot as a child, but you know how it was. I mean, I'm many decades older than you. So we were limited to Enid Blyton
Hmm.
and things like that, right? That was the extent of our reading, the classics and Enid Blyton, P.G. Woodhouse, maybe here and there. And then when I was expecting my first child,
Hmm.
like all of us, right? You want the best for your child. And one of the things that stuck with me was that I must read to the baby in the womb as
Yeah.
well. And so I had no idea what to do. I went out and bought some, I think maybe Panchatantra, some fables or something, and I would go on reading this. And then I began looking up books to buy. And this was the time of dial up internet connection. So some
Yeah.
1 hour a day or something. But in those readings, my knowledge about books grew, and very close to my house, actually it's still there, was the Scholastic Go Down, for
Oh,
scholastic books. And somebody told me about it, so I used to go there, and it's just this go down from where they then take books to the school book fairs and stuff like that. So those typical aluminium shelves, and they would give me a ladder, and I could climb up and explore the shelves. And so lovely Eric Carle and things. At that time, I didn't even know about Eric Carle, but
hmm.
reading the books, and I was like, oh, this is delightful, and I would buy them. So I some of my treasures that I have are from that time, that I would pull
Wow.
out this very dusty scholastic shelves. Of course, all the books that they published in India were at the lower levels,
Yeah.
and these few that they would get imported, they would stack away, thinking that I guess it's not so great, it wouldn't be in the order forms and stuff. So slowly my knowledge about books, even then, it's almost like 1% compared to now. And then as our kids grew up, we were this group of moms, and our kids were not even 2 or 2.5, and we felt we had to send them to classes, like
Uh-huh.
classes they had to go. So we very enthusiastically, I had heard of somebody, I'm from Bombay, I live in Chennai, that someone from Bombay had moved to Chennai and she was doing drama and elocution for children. Now we've taken these 2.5 years old who are barely babbling something sensible and we've gone for elocution and drama class. It's a complete sham of a thing. Okay, because obviously I'm not going to blame that poor lady, but I think our kids could barely speak properly and we
Yeah.
were trying to get them to elocute. So then we realized how silly we were. We were a group of about 4 or 5 moms. And we realized we had an architect among us, an artist among us, somebody who was in rural development. So everybody was qualified. Everybody knew stuff. And we
Mm.
said, hey, let us do things with our kids. We're so desperate for,
Yeah.
them to go to classes. So I thought I'll do cooking. That was my forte. And another friend said, no, I want to do cooking. The architect said, I want to do cooking with the kids. So I was like, okay, I have this huge selection of books. So I said, okay, let them come. I'll do storytelling. So to me, I didn't know the difference between read aloud and storytelling. And then as the weeks passed and the kids would come, the children decided that they liked my sessions the best and they only wanted to come to my house every week. And as they started coming, slowly their friends would ask, and
Oh,
so that's how it grew.
wow.
And then the mom started saying, you know what, I think we need to pay you now because this has become regular. There are other friends coming in, and I also needed to buy books.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I'm going to start charging. It's like some 250 rupees a month or something. But I used to have great fun with them, and the children still remember it. They were like, oh, we used to come to your house, and I'm blessed to live in Chennai because we have three of the biggest children's book publishers here, Tulika, Tara, and Kara Details. And Tulika at that time was just set up there, a sort of a store. I mean, it probably had started just a little before that, and they had a store.
Mm.
And I don't know if you know some of Tulika's older books, which were written by an storyteller called Kathy Spagnoli. And she has a lot of these sort of teacher resource books
Mm.
based around Asian tales, around Indian tales, very good books. And she was an excellent storyteller. She was married to an artist and they lived in an art village just outside on the edge of Chennai. Both of them also have books together on making toys and puppets, the
Wow.
husband and wife. I don't have that particular book, but most of these books are out of print now.
Mm.
So Tulika would have workshops with Kathy. And I had attended a couple of them. Every time there were workshops, I would go. And that's where I learned the difference between storytelling and read alouds. She was very, very particular that a book stay true to a book, not taking a
Mm.
book and spinning it off as a story where you um, put in your own words, because she felt that was disrespectful to the author.
Myth or folk tale that you never tire of telling? What?
So I love this folktale, which is also a book. Buy me a song, buy a song, buy me a
Yes.
song.
Yes.
The Kode Khara Khara, and I enjoy telling that one. And I love stories from Greek mythology. I like Pandora's box. I use these myths a lot with older children, with secondary children,
Mm.
um, in workshops. So I go to other schools also to do workshops like exploring through story, exploring creative writing, exploring just having discussions, looking at perspectives. So Pandora's box is one of those I enjoy. I love narrating the story of Perseus, particularly in my school because their houses are named after the constellation. So Perseus, Andromeda, and Cassiopeia all come in the same story. And then they have an Orion house. So that's
Uh-huh.
just the other story. So these are favorites that I do. And of course, the Odyssey, the whole
Yeah.
Odyssey story of the Odyssey is also a favorite. So yeah, and I
Wow.
love to compare myths across. And also, it's interesting because children will make the comparison themselves uh,
Mm.
to the myths they're familiar with, which will be Hindu mythology. Some of the Christian myths will take Christian children will take a myth and say, but this sounds like that in the Bible.
Mm.
And sometimes it's opened it out for me. And I've thought, my gosh, I never thought like that. But yes, what that child says is absolutely. So, Pandora's box, for example, this child compared it to Eve taking a bite of the apple in the
Uh-huh.
Bible. Are you familiar with the story
Yeah,
of Adam and
yeah,
Eve? And then there was unleashing of all the evils in the
yeah.
world, right, when she took that bite. So it's
Wow.
wonderful to see how and there's a and I love when children make that, because that means they're comprehending, they're connecting, and there's
Yeah,
a power in that. So to allow that space for these connections
yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
happen. Yeah.
And I want to actually build on that, and I'm so glad you spoke about it because this power of stories in children's lives, I want to talk about that. How stories beyond just entertainment, how do they shape children, their imagination, their empathy, even their relationship with the world? What do you think about that?
I feel to start with your own stories.
Hmm.
To just talk about your own family is enough. You do not need, see, today, not all young parents know stories at the tip of their tongue to just narrate, right? Talk
Hmm.
about your own family, because
Hmm.
then that is where comes a certain rootedness and a certain identity.
Yeah.
Now, to give you very personal sort of anecdote of this, I would talk a lot about my family, obviously, because I moved from Bombay to Chennai. I come from a community that is native to Bombay. We come from
Yeah.
the villages that made up Bombay. Okay, so we have a lot of connection to that place. And I take the kids to my parents' home a couple of times in the year, always for some festival. So then, there's some significance to what is happening. Meet also at around Christmas time for us, there would be a lot of family and friends who live abroad who would come in,
Hmm.
meeting them, for them to hear about our own childhood, our own lives. What was it like growing up? Very different from my life in Chennai. Now, in comparison, my husband's family, his mother didn't grow up in her native place. She grew up somewhere in the north. Um, so she didn't have that connectedness to either her mother tongue or her home.
Right.
So then she moved from the north down south after she got married, right? And so now you have no. So, and also maybe it's a male female thing. I
Hmm.
can't say that because my dad was the one who would tell us a lot of stories. So
Yeah.
I'm not too sure. And recently, my daughter is a communications graduate, and she said, I know a lot about your family because you always were talking about it. You were always sharing about it. I forgot. I wanted to keep this on standby, but so she made a book.
Wow.
Her project could be anything. It could be a film. It could be a photography exhibition. It could be a publication. There are many things that they could. And her line was actually fashion communication and branding.
Okay.
But it's completely not fashion related. It's fine. It was fine as per the university. You could do it. So she started with a thing of aunties fashions, aunties in that area I grew up in,
Yeah.
that they're very stylish, but they don't wear designer clothes or even branded clothes. It's typical you go to the tailor and stitch some outfit and get it. She wanted to document that, so she started by talking to quite well-known designer in Bombay, and things like that. But as she went on talking and meeting people, she realized that there was a certain sense, and of course, people are telling her things of their childhood,
Right.
things of how they grew up. Why is it they got into the line of work that they got into? And they all
Mm.
in careers like hairdressing, very creative careers, music, event management sort of thing, fashion designers, very different kind of things. And she realized that people were living their bliss. So she made this
Mm.
entire book. It's about 300 plus pages
Wow.
on this community that lives around this particular area, and that came from the childhood stories. And that
Um,
book was nominated for a couple of awards across the UK, for the way it was done, and just the whole concept of documenting a community that is not well known among the larger idea of what India is, even if you just take a minority
Yeah.
community, the
Yeah.
minority within a minority kind of, and I think a lot of that stemmed from her own experiences in college, in being in the Indian society, but because you have a Western name, not being considered Indian.
Right.
So, there are things like that. Now, and you don't realize this, how deep these sort of chasms of differences that um, we create in the world by saying, oh, you're from the north, but I thought all North Indians are like this, or
Yeah.
"You from the south, this is what I think all of it is." So I think a great, for me, it was great pride for her to acknowledge that this whole effort of hers, which was an entire year's work, stemmed from the stories that were told to her,
Yeah.
as a child growing up. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
she's done a whole chapter on my parents. They've had a tough life, interesting life, but a tough life. And for her to sort of see the value in that,
Yeah.
and write about their experiences was beautiful. And to see it being appreciated by different people, that it's
Yeah.
otherwise it becomes a very personal family sort of book. This is
Right.
being appreciated in ways. So there's such a power in telling stories. Start with the simple things of your own childhood. What did you do? What did your parents do? And it's not only like, did you know how hard I
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
study, and I was sitting under the lamppost and studying and all. It's not about giving a lesson.
Mm.
It's even talking about how foolish you were, at a certain time, or
Yeah.
how, when it just, I mean, because we are this idea of us being infallible, right? Like,
Mm.
oh, I did this, I worked so hard, this is what I did. When if my mother called, I always said yes, mama, and I did whatever she said. And all. I mean, great if you did it, but it's not so with with the younger generation,
Yeah.
right? So I know I didn't do it. So it's kind of, I think it's good to share these things, the very real stories.
Yeah, yeah. And, I'm so glad you spoke about that because I have been curious. Like, I mean, of course, not as personally, but when I see my friends and there are some, very palpable concerns that people have. Oh, I don't know how to tell stories. Oh, my child doesn't know, doesn't like reading. He doesn't like or she doesn't like books, I mean, I don't know how that happens because I have seen children naturally gravitate towards a book if you give them access to it. But some children, I mean, I have heard this from some of my friends and people I know around. So, what do you say to that, especially for those parents who may feel this kind of lack either of time or of, this capability? How do they start?
So one of the things is we are all storytellers. Okay,
Hmm.
we all are.
Hmm.
Uh, I mean, you'll pick up the phone and you'll call your sister or cousin to bitch about somebody else at a wedding you saw, right?
Yeah.
That is storytelling because we
Yeah.
have put masala on the top of it. You're throwing that little kotamali, the kothmir, the
Yeah, dhania
dhania to
garnishing.
to garnish it, right? You are putting that chaat masala for that little tang, and maybe
Yeah.
even chili, nice
Yeah.
spicy thing, right? So we all do it. So it's the most natural thing in the world. And there's this whole sort of influencer brigade, right?
Hmm.
Where everybody's become an expert.
Hmm.
One is to just be sensible about who is it that you're listening to.
Hmm.
uh, Great advice out there, but also lots of not so great advice. I don't know how to explain, how to figure this out.
Hmm.
Secondly is, when they are workshops, maybe you go for a storytelling workshop or a how to read or whatever. um, Choose a workshop that is going to help you understand rather than tell you how to
How
do
to
and now
do.
I'm going to copy,
Yeah.
right? Because if I was a performance storyteller, I would naturally do it. But if I'm not, no amount of classes is going to make me get off the bed while I'm reading a book and leap like a frog and caw like a crow and, you
Yeah.
dance around like a monkey. It's not. So do you.
Yeah.
Don't be stressed about how. There's no perfect way to read a book. The most important thing is that you read,
Hmm.
right? So keep the child in mind. Now, there are
Mm.
like many lists that will give you,
Yeah.
these are the 10 best, these are the 5 must reads, The 5 must read for that influencer, right?
Right.
It worked for her children. But you've got to discover your own. It's not cheap to buy books, so definitely look at library subscriptions. That whole event of going to a library is an event, right? It
Hmm.
is, make it that outing as much as you would to go to a mall or a restaurant or a movie. Hey, what are we going to get from the library today? Now, initially, if you're not a reader, you may have to fake this excitement. But if you
Yeah.
genuinely want your child to be a reader, push yourself to fake it a little bit and take them there, because as a mom, you're saying, I know my child must read, so I need to take them, to the library or whatever space that you're going to. Slowly, you will get into it because books are such, they're magical. As a parent, you will get into it even if you're not a reader.
Hmm.
Books again are not only for learning. I mean, you know that, Neha. So very often I get parents who are willing to buy these Tell Me Whys and
Hmm.
encyclopedia books. But that learning your child is going to get from a textbook, right?
Yeah.
But by reading storybooks, that is what is going to open out the world for them, help them understand people who are different from them, help them really find themselves in that book. Have a good laugh. Books don't have to be serious. You want to enjoy it. Find those books that are humorous. What is it that your child is interested in? Are they interested in mysteries? Are they interested in sport? Are they interested in animals? Those are the books that you need to find, get their interest. The
Hmm.
first thing is cater to their interest, because they're not gonna, I mean, if you're your child is like completely sporty and you're saying no, 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 they only have to read some religious stories or something, so I bought this like 500-page religious storybook, beautifully produced or whatever. They're not into it. They're not into it. Those are not the only stories to read, right?
Yeah.
So and our morals, I mean, not just religious, just moral stories of, we
Yeah.
don't need them. The morals are just coming automatically through any story.
Yeah.
We don't need. So definitely keep interest of your child in mind. And two is to give them the choice. So when you go to a bookstore, if you're buying a book, of course, everybody has budget restrictions. And they probably will run for like a Wimpy Kid or, one
Hmm.
of those. um, Maybe a child needs them. If you're going to say, no, I'm not buying you that, and that's all a rubbish book, they're going to hold on to it even harder, and then there's going to be a huge. Can you afford to buy that and one more of your choice? Maybe you pull out books and keep 2 books and say, okay, I want to buy you one more. You choose between one of these.
Yeah.
So again, you don't just pull out the book and say, this is the book that I came here to buy, and so I'm buying. Still give them the choice. Talk to them, explain to them, say, this is what this book is about. I think it would be really nice. I read somewhere that
Yeah.
children are enjoying this book, or this one is about this. I found it interesting. What do you think? So have this conversation with them. And I think that conversation really comes from respect, to actually
Hmm.
respecting them as an individual
Right.
that has the mind, the heart, the capability of making their own choices. And always empower choice, because um, sometimes our education system is such that, everything is catered for, right? The answers are
Yeah.
just there. Um, but how do you decide that I'm looking at this maybe in a different way? uh, am I allowed to bring in this different perspective? And if it's not happening in the school that your child is in, you can definitely help that happen while you're telling stories and reading books and saying, okay, so this is what this character did. Now, what do you think of that? Do you think that was a good decision of his to do this? Do you
Hmm.
think, have these conversations through the book, which means you are also reading along with your child. I
Yeah.
mean, when my son first started in chapter books, he of course didn't have the power to sustain reading a chapter. So I would read to him, but I would stop at a sort of cliffhanger.
Hmm.
And then I'd say, okay, now this is it. Now the rest tomorrow, right? And because he was so desperate to know it, he used to pick up that book and struggle to decode it. Um, he's a voracious reader. He still is. He was then as well. Early reader and voracious. My daughter, not so much.
Hmm.
Um, but now as an adult, she does read very much more non-fiction, more in the subjects that she's interested in, and then she reads extensively on that,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
But if I looked at them as children,
Hmm.
they had the same amount of books. But I think honestly, as a mom, if I had to think about it, I don't think I gave her as much time as I did my son.
Yeah. First child
Yeah.
syndrome,
So if
maybe.
I'm really honest, I think I didn't give her as much time. She was reading these very, some Tinkerbell fairy kind of books, ballerina, dancey books, bug the daylights out of me. But that was her genre. And I see it in school, There's
Yeah.
something about those girls at 7, 8. There's this little girly lot, and one goes, and all of them are like literally flitting around the library for those fairy books. And it irritates me. It really irritates because I'm thinking, oh my God, like, that there's so much more to read. What have I curated this library for? But there's obviously a need at that time.
Yeah.
And allowing that need, I think, allowing them to satisfy that need is what is going to keep them reading.
Hmm.
And then build up their stamina almost to read something that is a little more challenging, whether it's the level of language or the level of theme. What is the
Right.
theme that is featured in
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
so I think for me as an educator, all the time I find that I'm learning from the children, and
Hmm.
I need to also cater to what they where their interests lie.
Right.
Uh, I think that's first and foremost their choice and their interests for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And talking about the families again, if they want to start just one simple storytelling or reading ritual at home, anything small, what would you recommend?
So, first of all, I'd recommend making a little corner. So, by a corner, it doesn't even mean buying a big bookshelf or something. Have a little chowki, have
Hmm.
some books on it, have a little string maybe on the
Hmm.
window that you can just tie, and you hang the books. And this one is next to me, so I'm just showing you. You hang it like this, right, on
Right.
the string.
Yeah.
So, put out a small collection of books, maybe 5 or 6 to begin with. Put a little cushion, make it cute. If you have puppets, may put a little rug and then a cushion,
Yeah.
maybe space for you and the child. It could be a simple tent made with a bed sheet
Right.
under which they could be reading. Make it exciting, Reading is something special. We want to make their birthday party special, and that birthday party is over in a day. I'm
Right.
not saying don't have the birthday parties, but when you're doing these little things like a reading corner, creating this reader for life, and you need to make this reading special, because as humans, we all go back to things that we associate with pleasure, right? We will go to the restaurants that we like. We will order the kind of coffee or chai that we enjoy,
Yeah.
right? So whether you're a lemon tea person or you're a masala chai person or you're a black coffee person, you will order only that because now though I'm a black coffee person, this is what I need, right? And it makes me feel good. I'm tired, I'm whatever, I'm coming back for my cup of black coffee. I go to the same restaurants where people have made me feel good. This waiting staff is good, the food was good, and maybe value for money is important to
Yeah.
me. So these are the things that I'll go back. I will go to meet my family, that is uncles, aunties, cousins, who make me feel good about myself. I'm not going to the one who's you're very reluctantly will go and avoid going to somebody who's taking digs at me all the time.
Yeah.
So that way, make this whole thing of reading, it does like require an effort. Put in that little effort. Pinterest is full of ideas. Just go get ideas if you can't think it up. Create this little reading corner that is small and cozy and really nice. You can have a stuffed toy there that could be a reading companion. If you have a pet at home, have your child read to a pet, bring the pet in. And this is actually stuff that's that's proven to
Yeah.
be great for children who are slower readers, backward readers, not able to read as well as the others, to get them practice reading to a pet. So this
Wow.
similarly works for a pet. I must show you this, but I have too many books to show you. So then that is the danger. But there's a lovely book called Negative Cat. It's all about children going to the shelter to read to cats.
Oh.
And so wonderful. There are lots of ways to start, but put in that effort to make this little space special. Then time. You have to read every day to your child.
Mm.
I know you're working. I know you come home, you probably have household chores to do, but it's both parents take responsibility for this. What is the easiest time for you? Is it the morning drive to school? If you have a driver, can, somebody else is driving, can you read at that time and read to them? I personally found bedtime to be very effective. I was also strict on bedtime. So bedtime was by 8:30. So,
Mm.
dinner is done and then bedtime. So you go in, there's time. Um, what also happened then, Neha, is that their defenses are down at bedtime.
Right.
Another place when defenses are down is when you're driving and your child is at the back and you
Mm.
can't see their faces, right?
Mm.
So bed also you're lying and they're just talking. And a lot of stuff comes out at that time. So reading to them or singing, just language, sing in any language, whatever your mother tongue may be. You have certain songs that you can sing to them. All of these are very soothing. So telling them stories, just lying in bed, and then their stories will come out.
Right.
And I've, as a mom of adults now, uh, I cannot emphasize how important it is to open those channels of communication. And opening those channels of communication begin right from when your child is very young, for them to be able to tell you anything without judgment. Because
Mm.
then in the teenage years, you're no longer the most important person in their life, and everything has to do with the peers. And it's not necessary that the peers give the best support.
Yeah.
Um, and are those channels of communication still open them for them to come and tell you the very worst?
Yeah.
Um, and we are living in a time when mental health issues are on the rise in younger and younger children, right? So that need for constant conversation, and by conversation I mean it is two-sided. It
Yes.
is not me speaking at my child, it is me talking with my child. And when I talk about stories and storytelling, it is really conversation. Just,
Mm.
even narrating my day, for me to be able to come back and say, I had a bad day because this is maybe where I goofed up, my boss was mad with me. Simple things, they're not beyond a child's comprehension.
Yeah.
And for them to be able to say, what, I had a similar kind of thing. Maybe this child picked on me, my teacher picked on me, I wasn't able to do this, or this is how I messed up. Just to have that sounding board. Yes, I think conversations and stories go far deeper than just the entertainment or even the educational value of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's that's so insightful, I'm so glad we are having this conversation because I am taking so much back from you, Joanne, because we don't get to talk. I mean, I would have never reached out to you if it was not for this podcast. So it's like I am soaking it all in and
It's not that it's perfect, okay? It is not perfect.
mm,
I'm not saying that, hey, this is what I did and so my kids do this. It's nothing like that. But and they still will go to their friends for certain things. I'm definitely not on their close friends on Instagram, uh, but it just I think for me also some of it is a little bit in hindsight,
mm,
where you need there's pressure on all sides, social media pressure, pressure on performance, the kind of pressure. Then definitely, I mean, I'm in my early 50s now. I didn't have at my age, when I was a young child. So there's a lot more that we need to then be within our own homes, that comfort that can
Right.
um, hold hold a child.
Yeah, yeah. And now I want to talk a little bit about the library, a space that's so often, I would say, misunderstood or underutilized in schools. From your experience, what role can or should a school library really play in nurturing not just readers, but like children in totality?
So, where the library is one of the most underestimated places in the school. Sorry, I have a sneeze coming on at me suddenly. um, it has to start with the management, or let me take it back to the person in the library.
Hmm.
For the person in the library to actually believe that that's an important space, to
Yeah.
believe that the work that you are doing holds value. Now, the library period will be taken away for X number of things. This
Yeah.
happens in most spaces. The librarians are no, chalo, let her do invigilation duty, let her, him do some outside work. It's constantly like, what is the librarian doing? I don't blame this sort of understanding on anyone, because that is how I think maybe librarians also in the past took their role.
Yeah.
You just got a degree. How many librarians are reading?
Hmm.
And this is a very pertinent question, because now, there are all kinds of awards and competitions and things for school libraries. It is all about what you're doing. Everybody can make great charts, put up these activities, and do different things. But the crux of the matter is, I feel the power in my role comes in my conversations with the children
Hmm.
around books. With those conversations, a lot of other things come up as well. If I do not know the books, how am I going to recommend the books to the child?
Yeah.
If I do not know what happened in the book, how can I have a conversation around that book and recommend the next one? So main thing, I think, to be able to get that respect as a librarian or as a library educator is to know your work and know your books,
Yeah.
and for schools to see the value in it. Now, I think what is happening in many places, you are having your librarian, and then you're having a library educator, or what they term in the US and all as a teacher librarian. So you
Hmm.
come in to do the sessions, which is very much like what I do. Um, but even in that, know your work, know your students, make that effort to know them.
Hmm.
Come up with interesting books, interesting ways to read books, interesting ways to extend the book, interesting conversations to have. How can you support the rest of the school?
Right.
So the need in the school I work with, it's in a Montessori school, and it's a Montessori school all the way up to grade 9, which follows the
Wow.
Montessori philosophy. I mean, it goes up to grade 12, but the
But
Montessori philosophy
Montessori,
is
you know.
till grade 9. There are a lot of requirements in that kind of school where the children come in out of their classes to do research in the library. And
Right.
as a school, the policy that they've taken is that the research happens from books,
Hmm.
not off the computer. So they're coming into the library. Now, how can I support the teachers in their lesson plans if a child comes looking for a book? How can I support it? How can I say, hey, this is the topic that they're looking for. We don't have quite all the information. I need to sit down and research more on the net, figure out whether the book I found is worthwhile having, because these research books are not cheap to buy, right? Even
Yeah.
in school. The other thing that we worked with quite successfully in the past has been with the school counselors. So
Hmm.
we actually had a whole selection of books around SEL, social emotional learning, any topic that I felt could help the counselors address issues with children through a book. So I don't need to
Yeah.
go to the child, because the counselor is working with them one on one. So they will, but they need the awareness of that.
Right.
So then to create that collection, to build on that collection based on issues they were coming across with children. So definitely most schools will have children who are adopted, children who are in single parents homes, going through divorce, children with disability, learning disability. These are common threads that you're finding around you. So
Yeah.
are you then catering to your school community? So you need
Mm.
that awareness of, have I kept books there that are catering to my school community? And it makes a huge difference, Neha. I mean, I have had, I think it's Nandini Nayar's, sometimes Mama, sometimes Papa. I think it's Nandini Nayar. I'm not too sure if it is. Yeah, I just, and it was a book that came up in this, the Jarul Book Awards. Have you heard of
Yes.
the Jarul Book Awards? Yeah.
Yes.
So where three books are chosen, librarians across the country read out these three picture books to children, and children vote for their favorite.
Right.
There's this book, sometimes Mama, sometimes Papa, about a child whose parents are separating, and sometimes she's with Mama and sometimes she's with Papa. So when I saw that book, I was like, okay, now where am I going to read this out, right, to the children? I mean, but I thought, okay, there are children going through, where parents are going through divorce. So I kept it on the shelf. But I didn't ever think I could read it aloud to my class,
Mm.
because now there are children at a younger age who are unaware of divorce, right?
Right.
So I don't want to be the one explaining what is
Yeah.
divorce.
Yeah.
But it came up in this Jarul book list. And for years, our school has been participating in the Jarul Book Award. I was very upset with this choice.
Mm.
And I was like, now I'm stuck reading this book,
Yeah.
right, to the children, because I have to read it to them. And so the first class, and every page ends with this sort of refrain, sometimes Mama, sometimes Papa. So I read the first class. The first class was like they made it into a song. Sometimes Mama, sometimes Mama, sometimes Mama, sometimes. Like, okay, now I'm not going to get deeper. Let them take it
Yeah.
away, and I'm leaving, right? In the second class also, so I tried to change it, and there was a little bit of talk on, parents sort of separating and things like that. And we have mixed age group classes in my school, so second, third,
Oh.
fourth is together. The seconds are quite cutty, a little compared to the
Yeah.
fourth graders. So I was like, oh my gosh, okay. Third class, I see these two children come in who I knew were from single parent homes, and I just froze. And
Oh
I was like, now what do I do?
God.
Like, this is just not okay. I was really panicking a little bit. And I just got into it like it's a usual session, and I read it, and just sort of got through. And at the end of the session, this one child puts up her hand, one of the children who, and she stands up in front of the class and she says, oh, this is my life. It used to be like this, sometimes Mama and sometimes Papa, but now it's just Mama, and that's okay. And she was very confident.
Mm.
And this other little boy, who the counselors had told me was really struggling to accept this, he wouldn't
Mm.
acknowledge that this is happening, right?
Mm.
He stood up and he said, oh, my life is also just like her life. And I was like, oh my God, I've got to get to the counselors and say what
Yeah.
happened, right? And meanwhile, in the corner, I see this group of like fourth grade girls who are now the oldest in the class, and a lot of little wiles, and they're all like touching one of the girls, and I can see them mouthing, "Are you okay?" And what is going on in that corner? That particular child, I knew her grandmother. And so I was aware of her life, and I'm like, okay. And I just ignored it. I chose, let me ignore it, let it just run its course. Because now I'm bothered about this boy who stood
Yeah.
up, and I'm like itching to go to the counselors, because this was a big breakthrough that has happened with
Right.
this book. And at the end of the session, I'm sort of helping the children with their borrowing. And this child who is in the corner comes to me and she says, oh, Auntie, I wanted to tell you that, this is what is happening with my parents now. And it's a very grown up sort of way. And I was like, oh, okay, I was unaware. Yeah, 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 but it's all okay and all. They're friends. And she had her own little way of, making the whole thing out to me. And I was like, wow, now and what I loved is that her friends were aware of it, and they were trying to comfort her and say, oh my God, this book this teacher's reading, and
Yeah.
He's our friend. So there's this whole drama unfolding over this little book that the first class was singing along like a rhyme. Sometimes, so you really don't know where books take you.
Yeah.
And to me, this was one because I myself never would have opted to read that book aloud as a
Yeah.
read aloud. Maybe if we were addressing family structure as a theme or something, I would have said, okay, some people grow up with
Yeah.
just one parent. Um, so the power of this is quite something. And I later spoke to that child's grandmother who I knew, and she said, "Yeah, I haven't yet had it in me to share with my friends what is happening, but yes, this is happening." And I'm so glad that she was comfortable enough to come
Yeah.
and just talk about it
Yeah.
and to
Yeah.
hear that her friends are so supportive. So that for me was really quite an unfolding.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So
you,
yeah, so when you going back to your question, I'm sorry, is there different ways the library can engage with the school throughout, not just to the curriculum.
yeah.
There's also this whole trend of um, connecting books to the curriculum, which is good,
Mm.
supporting the curriculum with a story, but it needs to be done with a certain responsibility and understanding. And I do not believe that a story can completely replace a factual text for
Yeah.
this. Like, we also need that. The story can enhance it, can
Yes.
enhance the understanding. So there's a
Mm.
certain responsibility that comes with saying that, we have stories that align with the curriculum. We have
Mm.
to be careful about.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the time that you've started your journey till now, have you observed any big changes in the library spaces in schools?
So my library journey, Neha, I can say it's about 9 years or so.
That's a
Yeah,
long
but
time,
more,
even
yeah.
then.
But so I think what is a marked difference is definitely between the IB school libraries and the other libraries, because IB school libraries become media centers. It's very media
Mm.
focused. They need to teach responsible use of the internet and all that. And
Mm.
they have these maker space things as well. I am n- very much, my personal thing is that I still see the library as a space to I feel the main space is to connect children to the love of reading.
Yeah.
Right? And I feel everything else takes away from that. So I feel a library needs to be open for children to come in, for school managements to say, yes, it's okay for children to just go by in the lunch break, give the librarian another lunch break.
Yeah.
Let them be there. So children come in, just hang out and read. I mean, I have children who come and just sit there because they have no friends,
Yeah.
right? Or maybe they're being picked on, and that library is a refuge for them at that particular point of time. There are groups that come in, to share their excitement over
Yeah.
books. To have free access, in the sense, obviously content is limited. I can't let my second standard or fourth standard take
Yeah.
a book meant for a young adult, right? So that a limitation is there. But to otherwise within the section to have free access and choice, which is important for them to have. But to also, I do have limitations on the book based on the value of the book, because
Mm.
sometimes the books are out of print, not just the
Mm.
monetary value of them, but that I'm not going to be able to source them. So if a child borrows it and takes it home, if they lose it, or if something falls on that book,
Yeah.
parent is not going to be, the policy for us is that the parent replaces the book. It's not going to happen because it's not available. So those books, I immediately, we have a special sticker. By all means, you are free to access it in the library and read it, but not take it home.
Yeah.
So I think for me, I feel the core of the library definitely should still stay with books. The trend is changing. Also, maybe it's a minority, but there are libraries that are opening out fabulous discussions and dialogues. And for that, your librarian or library educator should be capable of holding those discussions.
Yeah.
And in which case, it means that you need to constantly learn, constantly read, constantly attend talks around things on these sort of topics that are dealing with diversity and equity and inclusion. These are the ones that we need to talk about at the moment. It's so much. The world is, up in flames, literally, right? Little flames at the moment. And so everybody's so sensitive to everything. So
Yeah.
there is the space to allow the questions, or to have a child who's very sure of what their viewpoint is, but to just look at something, a possibility that may be different. Am I able to foresee these are questions that may come up? Can I offer differing points of view?
Mm.
So um, balance it out, like,
Right.
on all kinds of views about different issues, and for that you have to open out yourself,
That's
because
right.
as the person who's curating the library, I have to be very fair, very open to all kinds of views and not just my own.
Yeah, yeah. And I have a very, kind of, it might be a silly question, but I have a question that I want to ask. What are some of the common mistakes that schools or even parents make when they think about reading and access?
So access, one is the kind of themes, right? Children know far more than we
Yeah.
think they know. Uh, Girls at around 9 years, 10 years, very curious about their bodies. What is going to happen? And from what I notice, the girls are far more sensible than the boys. The
Hmm.
boys' puberty hits a little later. And
Right.
when they pick up books, they are just being silly,
Hmm.
because they, when they're reading about it, the changes that are happening to a girl, changes that are happening to themselves, sometimes the changes haven't yet started with themselves.
Yeah.
So to have this information there, because it's healthy, otherwise they're going to get it off some website that may not necessarily be clear. I remember a counselor that we had in the school, when my son was there, and it was over a particular TV series that I was not happy with him watching. And she told me, she said, Joanne, if you say no, he's going to find a way to watch it.
Hmm.
So it doesn't matter whether you say yes or no. He's
Hmm.
going to figure it out. In your house, in a friend's house, in somebody's house, he's going to watch it. So rather, why don't you sit with him and watch it with him? And
Hmm.
then discuss what is offensive, or even if it is offensive.
Right.
Right? So yes, we have. I feel it. A library, a good library, should have books about all kinds of topics. Topics be clued into what children are curious about, what they want to know, and have access. As parents, trust your child not to get brainwashed. I mean, we have all
Hmm.
kinds of book bannings happening at the moment.
Yeah.
Yes, we have a point of view. This is, all of us are, this is the only point of view. It's so divisive at the moment. Uh, but you yourself have not read, or, been exposed to different points of view. So it's not easy to say be exposed to it. It's not.
Yeah.
But just be aware that there are other perspectives and other points of view. So let your child choose what they want to read. Secondly, is this idea that comics and graphic novels are not reading. They are. They very much. We have many different learners, different ways of learning. So graphic novels definitely appeal to a reader who is a more of a visual sort of learner and needs those images. Um, what other mistakes would I say? For schools itself to actually value that library, invest
Yeah.
first of all in people that are capable of doing something with your library, right? And once you have hired them, to give them that respect. At the
Hmm.
same time, for the person, the librarian, or the library educator, to value that role and to take it serious. This is not some time pass role, to really value the work that you're doing and take it seriously. The other thing is, for parents, when you're choosing the school, ask
Hmm.
about the school library, give it importance. Otherwise, the library is, oh, this school has library, physics lab, chemistry lab, bio lab, swimming pool, badminton court, and oh, wow, 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 they've got so much, and some nice pictures will come up on the website of the library. Is that library alive?
Yeah.
And by alive, I mean, is it being used? Are those books
Yeah.
being talked about? Is there activities happening around the books? And it's not activities to then splash on social media, it's activities to actually help children reflect and think and guide them into further reading choices that are challenging them in different ways.
Right.
So I think all the stakeholders in the school are the children will respect based on what your output is, what the
Right.
school considers it to be, so I think that is, everybody involved needs to look. Don't think of the library as when we were all in school, when you went
Hmm.
library period and the librarian handed you one book and you had to read David Copperfield, even if you really wanted to read a Tinkle, right? When most people probably wanted to read a Tinkle in
Yeah.
in library in that
Yeah.
time. So uh, don't imagine it to be like that. To
Hmm.
place some value in this, and even the local libraries that you go to, take your child, give them some importance. Yes, it may be a little expensive, but else are you spending on that would be over in like a jiffy? Well, as I mean, so think about, there are libraries that send books to your
Yeah.
house, so you may not even need to go there if it's too far away. But raising a reader is definitely effort, and you put in that effort, and you will reap benefits. So that's
Yeah, yeah. And a kind of a connected question because you talked about your son, wanting to watch a TV series. What's your take on screen time versus reading times? Parents often feel guilty or conflicted. How do you suggest we balance that?
so you are the adult. You need to
Mm,
set the limits. So for me personally, there was screen time on weekends, not
mm,
on weekdays, um, because it is only when a child is bored that
mm,
they will get creative.
mm,
But if we are constantly providing the entertainment, and by that case, be it the iPad or the TV or whatever, um, then they're never bored. They will never create. All creation will come out of boredom and a need. So if there's never that, we don't need to cater to our kids all the time. They
yeah.
can find their way. And I think that can be addressed in many ways, whether it's in the school library or at home.
Mm,
Don't cater. Let them be bored a little. Give them that freedom of expression. Have things available for them like colors, blocks, things where you create and you explore. But once you start that screen, very difficult to pull the screen away because they're constantly stimulated, right? There's no
yeah.
stimulation. It's passive. They are passive and the
Mm,
stimulation is happening. So similarly, I'd like to share that when you talking about storytelling, and there are plenty of storytelling on YouTube, it is not the same,
mm,
because that is, you're just watching that. It's again passive listening. And while that person will say, "Oh, where is the bunny?" and there's a bunny hopping across the screen, and the child will point, "There's the bunny," and all that. No, 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 that's not interaction.
mm,
Interaction will come when you are talking to them. And I am talking, or Neha, if you notice that, I'm talking to listeners now, like Neha has been changing her questions as per my responses. I am talking to Neha based on the expression that I can see on her face, whether am I with the question that she's asked me or not, right? And then I will scoot back to where I think she was trying to take me. And that is exactly how it is that we as parents, when we're telling a story or even as a storyteller, to be able to read the expressions on the people, read the room really,
yeah.
and figure out, now how do I respond? Your child is asking something, literally completely opposite to what the story is saying, but you'll be surprised what connection they've made. To
Mm,
you, it may seem like, oh my gosh, I'm talking about London, he's talking about Tokyo, but no, no, no. he will bring it. There'll be some connection, and that is the magic, because that is the comprehension coming through. So all the connections kids make to try and understand,
Yeah.
make sense of things around them.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. You're so visual and you're so evocative. Like your words are so evocative. I can literally see all that happening and in front of my eyes. So it's just beautiful. And Joanne, I want to talk about your philosophy right now. One thing that I admire, I think the most about your work is your openness. You've said that on your website. You often talk about it, your belief that knowledge must be shared freely. Can you talk about that? What drives this philosophy for you?
So I think so when I talk about freely, when I do workshops and things, they are, I mean, I do
No,
charge fees
yeah,
for
yeah,
them,
of course.
but when I share. So what happened was a while ago, a friend asked me, she said, "Oh, Joanne, you've been doing this for so long, and so now how are you scaling up?" And I was like, "Scaling up? What do you mean, like scaling up?" I mean, to me, scaling up is depth. So
Hmm.
learning more, understanding more. I've spoken to somebody, I didn't quite understand what they were saying. Now I need to, oh, this is what I don't know, now go and read up
Yeah.
on it and try and understand, make sense, how does it connect to my work. um and I said, you know what, I'm just not someone who knows how to make this a business. Per
Hmm.
se, yes, I will charge for my workshops. You reach out to me, I will send you my fee structure and everything. But more than that, I cannot be bombarding people with emails saying this is what I do, and I like to function on a word of mouth. Also, my views tend to be a little alternative, so I prefer to work with people who are looking
Align.
for
Yeah.
something like that. It's not going to be very commercial. It's not going to be very demonstrative that this is how you should do it, and the whole world, please follow me, kind of. I don't believe in that. So she said, okay, but you know what? You've been doing this for so long. I think it's time you need to share this. And what she meant it in a way of monetarily, you need to be sharing your stuff. So others, now you're older as well, others can, learn from you. And I thought, oh gosh, no, 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 this is not working for me. And I thought, okay, but I guess there's a certain responsibility that comes with sharing my knowledge.
Yeah.
And so then I started writing far more on social media,
Hmm. Hmm.
because my blog is really like my filing system. So the stuff that I do, and there are like another 50 or 60 that are all in my drafts folder, and I've not yet
Wow.
put them on because I need the time to format. And now there's SEO, and then you have put on the pictures, and the pictures have this, what is it called, there's something else where you,
Caption,
not
the
just the
all
caption.
text.
Yeah, alt text, exactly, alt text. And I'm like, oh my God, now I've got to figure out. So everything is not just pasting this thing, but it just now become alt text and SEO and keywords. And I'm like, oh my God, all that takes another, half more than writing the article. So I thought, if you have the patience to read the blog in the way I wrote it, so it's not, which is why it's not exactly like lesson plan kind of thing. I
Hmm.
think you just glean from it, because I very much believe that this the sort of work that this is takes on the personality of the person doing it.
Yeah.
And I may do it one way, but you can take an idea from me and put in your own personality into that,
Yeah.
to cater to the people the children that you are working with, right?
Yeah.
So, which is why I prefer writing it in a more sort of essay sort of way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so that's where it comes from, sharing. And I can tell you, Neha, that really, this old adage that says you put out into the universe and the universe will give back. So I've put out, and things have come back to me,
Yeah.
in ways that, and again, let me say, this is not monetary. It's
Hmm.
things that's just bringing me joy and happiness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Recognition, maybe in the way that I'm happy to be recognized. It's not
Yeah.
that my name is flashed all across, social media or something, nothing like that, but in small ways. And to me, that's far more meaningful. So I can see it happening. I see
Mm.
it, that it's constantly I'm getting back. And I
Mm.
often get asked by, younger storytellers I'm interacting, and they're like, "Oh, what work are you doing?" Like, "Oh, you're doing work. Oh, you have work." And I'm like, "Yeah, like I have." But because I'm not there, and
Yeah.
I'm not always sharing what I've done, or some organization hasn't splashed my picture out,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that I'm not doing work. I've taken on work. Some of it may be work that is not paid for because I'm working with an organization that I want to do work for,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's meaningful to me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I'm happy with the work I do, and it's enough of work. I'm busy all the time, so
Yeah.
I like.
Beautiful. And I want to talk about a couple of books now. If you had to think of one book or story that's been a companion for you as a parent, what book would that be?
So definitely not parenting books. I'm not
Not
ready.
parenting books, but
Oh,
yeah.
this is the toughest question of what are the books. I mean, I showed you my wall of books. I'm looking at
Yeah.
them. I have no idea. It's a horrible question because everybody asks me this, and every time I have this horrible answer, like I don't know. My thing is changing all the time. I don't have a particular must read. So maybe a great fun read that I would recommend to my elementary children is Holes by Louis
Oh,
Sachar.
yeah.
Great fun. It goes into one of my all-time favorites, but it's not a must-read as a parent, or there's not great wisdom in it. It's just great great writing, great plots, things like that. I love picture books, so I have a
Mm.
huge collection. Today I put out a reel, and author friend messaged and said, "I can see you just have a lot of picture books. Like, where are your chapter books?" And I'm like, they're at ceiling level. They're way up there. But what you can see is picture books. I collect a lot of books about reading and books about libraries. So I
Hmm.
have a huge collection of picture books on that, and also storybooks. I love wordless picture books. I see a lot
Mm.
of potential in them. I can share with you what I'm currently reading. It's too diverse. This is Uma
Sunshine Project.
Krishnaswamy's newest one, and Gardener in the Wasteland is another one,
Uh-huh.
which is a graphic novel, also for more grown up people.
Mm.
These are my two currents, which is why they're right here. Horrible that I cannot answer this because they're just far too many. I need to like turn the camera around and go through my bookshelf. What I do, one of my favorites of late, because I love books that is Art is a Voice by Kripa.
Oh God. Yeah.
To talk about the Indian published books. But having said that, I um, I am also a great believer in good writing. Okay,
Mm.
and I will support books and authors where I see that the writing is good because your facts are right.
Mm.
Just the whole sentence construction and all of that is right. Whole production quality is good because there's a certain respect that we owe children. And I think that when you have badly edited books, there's a great disrespect then for a child. And then I do not promote those books. I will not, no matter how popular they may be,
Mm.
um, because I personally feel it's wrong.
Yeah.
So when we blindly say, support Indian published, definitely, but support Indian published, make educated decisions about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's my one take, and I get a little flack for it, and because well, it's
Yeah, but it's okay. Nobody is paying us for this. So
yeah. So that's it. I love Patricia Polacco. Uh,
Hmm.
I'm going to turn it around because I want to talk about the book.
Yeah, please do.
Okay.
Please do.
I know you can't see it. Can you? Yeah. You can't see, no? Can you see?
Yeah, now we can see.
These are my Patricia Polacco on this side. Can you see them?
Wow. Yes.
A whole lot of them. This whole line. These up here are my books about books and books about
Wow.
libraries.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. These are my books about change, about protests, about
Yeah.
standing up for things. Okay,
Yeah.
these are the things that I really like. A book which I think it may be available but expensive now is The Velocity of Being. It's Maria Popova. It's letters from authors to young readers.
Wow.
They're little.
I
Uh,
love how you've annotated the books. This is so nice.
So, lot of books about books, like I have, I read on those. Yeah, just lot of books from my storytelling days. When just what is storytelling? What is the art of storytelling? Where did it
Yeah.
start? A lot of those also have a lot of wisdom in them because storytelling is us. It's human, right? So,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so just a lot of those
Mhm.
children's books far too much, Neha. I will need one whole session. Tell me, I'll keep a pile from floor to here with books, and I'll have to show you the books.
We'll do a follow-up session where we can just talk about books one by one. But Joanne, this has been such a nourishing conversation. Before you go, I have one last question for you. I'd love to ask you if you had to leave parents listening today with one thought about stories, libraries, and the role they can play in children's lives, what would that be?
I think we underestimate what stories can do. So, as a parent, I I beseech you to just start. Just start. It's not the most natural thing to do. Do not be conscious about it. The only audience that you have is your child.
Yeah.
And your child will love you regardless. You can be the biggest goof, you can have the worst accent, you can have a wrong language. And by that, I mean, storytelling is not only in English, it's in
Mm,
any language that you're comfortable in. Just tell. I mean, honestly, I'm telling you, I grew up monolingual.
mm,
My mother tongue is Marathi, but we only ever spoke English at home. So as a result, we don't. I mean, I speak Hindi terrible, the typical Bombaya Hindi, and it's bad Bombaya Hindi if it's possible to have that. I Tamil is like it's like I say everything panna. It's like saying like no dusting karo, reading karo, drink karo. Like literally put karo in everything. Kind of, okay, so I feel there's great power in your mother tongue.
mm,
Hold on to that.
mm,
Tell the stories in that. Sing in that. Play little clapping games, rhymes, all the stuff. And
mm,
every conversation, if you're a parent of a young child who you're carrying on your hip, and you're pointing to the crow, you're pointing to the car, you're pointing to the doggy on the road, even that matters
right.
because that is what is opening out this little thing. Once your child starts verbalizing, they're going to start first initially just making sounds and pointing to
Mm,
whatever, but there itself this sort of give and take has started. You
mm,
start it. If you have a baby, if your child is older, a toddler, your child is in the fourth, fifth, sixth, just start reading to them. Read along with them. They wanna. And oh, Harry Potter is not the only book in the universe. Please, 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 it's not. Okay, it's great.
Thank you for
There are
saying
many
that.
children who do not read Harry Potter.
Yeah.
I love Harry Potter. I've read them all. My daughter, who is not the biggest reader, read Harry Potter. Uh, Read them all. My son, who till today is the most ferocious reader I read, and we share an account on Amazon, and every little while, almost every second day, there's a book being downloaded on Kindle, and we share. And I don't read a lot of grown-up books now because I'm reading children's books, and so I can. He's the biggest reader I know. I haven't met a bigger reader than him. Hasn't read Harry Potter at all. He detested the books.
Hmm.
So respect that. I find children in grade seven who are 7 years of age coming and saying we want to read Harry Potter. Great. Remember, reading is decoding those
Hmm.
meanings. word, but to actually understand a lot of what is happening in the later Harry Potters, it's way beyond a child, a child of 7 can understand and comprehend. So yeah, let's leave the Harry Potters. Let's, for when
Yeah.
they pick it up naturally. As
Yeah.
much as you loved it, because I know the parents today are all like the Harry Potter generation, right?
Yeah.
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 So you're excited about it. Read one page, let your child read one page if you want to, or any book, but read. Just start. That's all.
Wow. Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Joanne.
Thanks, Neha. It's been really great for me to share all my gyan. I hope it's not too much for those listening in, but it's been a real honor for me to share with you and do this podcast with you. So thank you so much for inviting me.
I love it. You bring so much joy, depth, and possibility, the sense of possibility in something seemingly so simple, and at the same time so profound, as a story. So it's just so beautiful to have you here and to actually meet you once again,
Once again,
even
yeah.
even if it's virtual right now. But thank you so much.
Thank you, and all the best to you, the podcast, and everything that you're undertaking after this.
Thank you so much. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Parenthood Spotlight. If you enjoyed our conversation, do follow, subscribe, and share it with friends and fellow parents. Until next time, may your days be full of stories worth telling and moments worth remembering. This is Neha Garg signing off. Bye bye.